The Overwhelmed Brain is a proud provider of self-empowerment for your personal evolution. Are you annoyed by affirmations? When someone walks up to you and tells you to think positively, do you run up and down the street screaming, "My life is now complete! No more worries, no more stress, all because I'm thinking positively"? If affirmations feel like lies and positive thinking feels like denial, then get ready to start creating the life you've always wanted now. Hello, this is Paul Coliani, host of The Overwhelmed Brain, the personal growth show for the critical thinker. On every episode, we'll talk about practical, down-to-earth steps to help you improve your mood and keep you sane in this powerful journey we call life. I want to help you bridge the gap between your emotions and reason, causing you to discover why you do the things you do and what you can do to reach higher levels of happiness and lower levels of stress and overwhelm. If you're here to learn more common sense tips for improving your life, you're in the wrong place. This is the direct path to uncommon sense, and that's why it's going to help you learn, heal, grow, and evolve. Before we get into today's quote, I want to tell you what's happening over at the Healing Broadcast Network. You've probably heard me say that this show is a proud member of the Healing Broadcast Network on almost every episode, at least for the last 20 or so. Well, now you're hearing something a little different at the beginning about your personal evolution. I want you to evolve. And I don't mean grow gills and breathe underwater. I mean, I want everyone, including myself, to reach an emotional evolution so that when the stressors of life happen, and they will happen, that we're emotionally prepared for the worst things to come our way. I mean, there are breakups, divorces, betrayals, physical pain, death, and a lot more that crosses our path at least once in life. If not directly with us, then with someone we know. I created this show to evolve your emotional consciousness, where you can respond to life's most challenging situations carefully and consciously while still maintaining a healthy emotional state. And unless you're living in a cave or are one of those rare individuals who isn't affected by the challenges in life, you, like me, probably do have challenges that come up that are hard to get past. Everything you hear on The Overwhelmed Brain comes from my previously overwhelmed brain. Everything I've learned in my life, whether from my dysfunctional upbringing or even my professional training, both equally as valuable, comes through to you on this show so that what I learned may also help you too. But I'm only one person with my experiences and references that I share with you. And sometimes my life doesn't equate to yours at all. Or sometimes what you've experienced is something that I don't have any familiarity with. So I created something bigger than me and bigger than the overwhelmed brain so that I could help others start spreading healing information into the world. And that's why the Healing Broadcast Network was born. HBN is where counselors and healers and coaches like myself share their wisdom and advice to help you create a better you. Right now, we're just getting started over there, but over time, there'll be more articles and more personal growth and emotional evolution coming your way. So if you're into learning more about yourself, visit thehealingbroadcastnetwork.com and check it out. If you are a coach, a counselor, or a healer and want to be a part of the group, membership is now free. So head on over to healingbroadcastnetwork.com for more information on that. And of course, if you're not a coach, counselor, or healer, you'll definitely want to check out the latest articles from our members. This site is for everyone. Anyway, let's get to today's quote. It's by Brene Brown, and it's this: "Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others." I've said this in different ways over the last 2 years, though I've never seen it so eloquently put. When you honor your personal boundaries, you are honoring yourself. You are loving yourself by default. And yes, you will disappoint others along the way. I'll never forget a time when I was on a business trip with a friend of mine who I worked with, and we were at, I think, a luncheon or maybe a dinner, and one of our clients, he was a very nice guy, but he was also sort of pushy. And he wanted my phone number, but the last thing I wanted to do was talk to this guy on the phone. Now, he's one of our clients, so in business, he had my business line, and that was great. We could talk in the office, and I had no problem with that. But I didn't want him having my personal number. So we chatted about something, and he wanted a partner in something in business that he was doing, and I really didn't want a part of it. Now, at the time, I was not very good at honoring my boundaries. So when he mentioned this business agreement, I said, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds like an interesting prospect for someone. Not really mentioning that I would be interested in something like that, but I think he took it that way, and I wasn't very clear that I didn't want to be a part of what he had going on. So he goes, great, give me your phone number. I'll call you and we'll talk about it. And I was like, oh, and you know that split millisecond that you have to make a decision, and sometimes the decision's already made, but it's a matter of honoring that decision or saying something else? Well, that was happening inside of me. The first thing I thought of was like, I don't want to give this guy my phone number. I don't want to talk to this guy outside of the office. I don't want to have any personal conversations with this guy. I think our communication today is great. It's all business and has nothing to do with me. I'm just helping him out, but I don't want to talk to him on a personal basis or get into any other types of out of the office business arrangements with him. So a thought came up, what do I say? This was one of the first times I remember honoring myself, and all I said was, no. And that's it. And his expression was like, oh, okay. Well, I'll call you sometime at the office. I was like, that'll be fine. You can call at the office, but no, I don't give my phone number out, or something like that. I think I kept it very short. I might have even just said no, and that was it. But I looked over at my friend, my coworker friend, and he was laughing because he was surprised that's how I responded to him. And my friend and I talked about it later, and I said, I just didn't want to give my phone number to him. And I realized at that moment that if I did, that I'd be getting into long, drawn-out conversations that I don't want to have. So at the risk of disappointing him, I told him no. But you know what? That was a very good decision on my part. I didn't want anything to do with what he was offering, and it's possible that a business arrangement or partnership would have been good, but I just didn't like his vibe. I didn't like his pushiness. I didn't want to be involved with him. And that split second of decision, that's something that we come up against, you and I come up against a lot in our life. Whether we're at work, whether we're with someone that we love or don't love, or just a friend or whoever, we get moments of opportunity to either honor ourselves and express what we want or don't want, or swallow that opportunity and say something that they want to hear. So I want you to think about the times in your life where you chose to say something that somebody else wanted to hear, but you didn't really want to say. Or you chose to do something that somebody else wanted you to do, but you didn't really want to do it. Brene Brown's quote, "Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others," is really about daring to be honorable to ourselves. Dare to be honorable to you. Take the risk of honoring yourself. It's really not a risk when I think about it. Some people think it's a risk, though, because they don't want to face the consequences. They don't want to tell the person something else other than what they think they want to hear. In other words, You don't want to disagree. You don't want to disappoint. You think that life will be easier and smoother if you say things that you think they want to hear, when quite the opposite is true. Quite the opposite happens. You build stress by not honoring yourself. You build future events and anxiety by not honoring yourself. And honoring yourself is sometimes a simple yes or no. Like that day when I had that business lunch. I just said no. Now, if he had pushed and said, oh, come on, just give me your phone number and we'll talk about it, or why won't you give me your phone number? I would have checked in again probably and figured out what I was feeling and took another step to honor myself. Because the feeling was strong. The feeling that I don't want to share my private, personal phone number with this guy was very strong. So I chose not to. And I couldn't think of an excuse. I couldn't think of a way to soften the blow. So it just wasn't a no. So I just said it. No. And it worked out. Some people aren't going to be so receptive, and some people will not honor you honoring yourself. And this is where disappointment from them comes in. When people respect you and they support you being you, those are the kinds of friends you want. Those are the kinds of family members that you know really honor, love, and support you. We think that all of our family, well, most of our family loves us, but one of the components of loving someone else is supporting them, even if you don't agree with their decision. It's supporting someone, supporting themselves. It's honoring someone and respecting someone who honors themselves. So if you know that honoring yourself will disappoint others, well, I hate to say it, but that's too bad. That's too bad for them that they're not getting what they want, because if it's disappointing them and they don't respect your decision, then it's almost like saying, I don't want you to honor yourself. I want you to fulfill my needs. So think about that next time you choose not to honor yourself and express your truth with someone who gets disappointed and walks away upset in some way. Are they truly someone who loves and supports you, who you want to keep in your life? If they are not honoring your decision to honor yourself, then maybe they're slightly toxic. What they're doing is telling you to honor their needs over yours first. That's toxic. If you feel like you're being coerced or pushed into a position where you need to honor the needs of someone else over yours at the detriment to you, that's a problem. That's a toxic environment. That's a relationship that will not be strong and loving and supportive. That is almost like a leech that's attached to you that you can't get off, and they're just sucking the life out of you. It's an awful picture. I'm sorry. But when you start honoring yourself, these leeches fall off. They either go away because they can't take advantage of your generosity anymore, or they develop a new, fresh perspective of you where they can admire you for honoring yourself, where they can look up to you and go, wow, you're really an authentic person. I respect that. And that's typically what happens, one or the other. They either don't like you anymore and don't want to be in a relationship with you anymore because they're not getting what they want anymore, or they want to stay in that relationship because they support you being you. It's always great to be around people that are authentic because you know what you're going to get. So what I want to leave you with in this segment is to take small steps towards honoring yourself. Take small steps of honoring your personal boundaries and treat yourself like your own best friend. What would you tell your best friend if they were in the same situation that you were in? I've told this story on the show before, but I was in a meeting once where the boss was going around to each and every individual employee and putting them down in some way. And he would go to the next employee and say, why aren't you selling more? What are you going to do to sell more? And each and every person felt bad after he pretty much chastised them and put them in their place. And when he came to me, there's that moment, that nanosecond of decision again, where I go, wow, I don't want to be treated that way. Am I going to honor myself and say something? Or am I just going to let him do his thing? And I knew my job was on the line. But I decided to say something a little passive-aggressive, but I did say it. I said, this is what I'm going to do to help sell the product even more. And I'm doing it because you'll stop yelling at us. And just like that little bit of silence I just put there, that's pretty much how it was in the room too. And he just looked at me and said, oh, you think I'm yelling at you? Then he just went to the next person because he probably didn't want to deal with me anymore. Well, after that, my coworkers came up to me and said, wow, I'm so glad you said that. He was just being mean and you said what we were all thinking. And that was the first taste of really honoring myself, that once I got that taste in my mouth, I wanted more. I don't know if it was an ego thing at the time, but it sure felt great sticking up for myself. So with the best friend example, if your best friend was in that situation, what would you tell your best friend to do? I mean, you may say, oh, just keep your mouth shut because he could fire you. But, I would tell my best friend, don't stand for that. You're better than that. You're worthy. You are worth more than that. And you don't deserve to be treated like that. And that's what I did for myself that day. It was a huge step for me. It was hard, but I did it. And I didn't get fired, even though I could have. And in fact, because I had several coworkers come up to me, I felt an admiration that I've never felt before, at least not in that way. So I felt really good knowing that it just felt like I did the right thing. Standing up for yourself is the right thing. Honoring your personal boundaries is the right thing. Not everyone's going to agree, and yes, some people will be disappointed. But you're going to feel a whole lot better because living authentically just feels pretty darn good. And as you know, if you're in a dangerous or violent situation and you can't honor your boundaries, sometimes that's not going to work in your favor and you just have to get out of the situation. But for the most part, in most situations in everyday life, you can stand up for yourself and you can take sometimes a leap of faith, because that's what it feels like. You don't know what's going to happen, so you just step off the cliff and build your wings on the way down and see what happens. No, I don't want to give you my phone number. I don't want to share my personal information. No, I don't want to work this weekend. I've got other obligations. Yes, there are consequences for honoring yourself, but what I've found in my life over and over again is that the consequences that I believe will happen don't. And then quite the opposite happens. Just like another day at another job, I stood up and spoke my truth to my two bosses. And suddenly, about a week later, I had a raise and a promotion. It's strange how things work out when you actually honor yourself. I like to think of it as our true paths. When you honor yourself, your true path is revealed. That's all for this segment. Let's go on to the next one, Ask Paul. All right, this next segment is Ask Paul, but typically we have Asha here to talk about getoutofthemess.com. She's an independent associate for Legal Shield, which is legal insurance that you can have for life situations that happen to you, the difficulties that come up where you might need an attorney, or maybe you just want to ask a question of an attorney. Well, this legal insurance that she represents is like, she pays $20 a month and it's well worth it. She's been using it for about 8 years, but we can't have Asha on the show today because she's sick. She's taking care of herself. I told her to stay home. Don't worry about this. I'll just mention your name and the number in case anybody wants to contact you and ask about this service. So if you want to contact Asha and ask about legal insurance, her number is 678-355-8777. or you can go to getoutofthemess.com to find out more. I wish you well, Asha. All right, this is Ask Paul, where I read a listener email on the air and then do my best to help them through the challenge. Here's today's message. Dear Paul, what do you do when you're trying to honor your boundaries and act like an adult, but you're constantly being told to not be upset, or you're overreacting, or maybe the worst one, you expect too much from other people? Yes, I'm sorry, I expect the rest of the world to be mindful of others. I'm not acting hysterically or irrationally. I'm not a big person, so I doubt I'm scaring anyone. Yet, I'm just one of those people whose requests and needs are constantly shuffled while being told stupid things like, he loved you, but he couldn't do the right thing. Or, you have no idea how much your father loves you, but he just doesn't know how to be a father. Even if I ask the kids to do the dishes, they say, great, now I'm in trouble. Somehow I feel that all the statements kind of point the finger back at me. What am I doing wrong here? Thanks for any ideas that you can provide. All right, Jill, I'm going to call you Jill. First of all, the first thing that comes to my mind is that you are 100% responsible for how your communication is interpreted. Now, some people may disagree with that because I've heard people go, what? I can't be responsible for how they interpret what I say. But you have acute observation skills that you can use. So when you're talking to someone and you say something and you can see their reaction, whether through their body language or you can hear their reaction through their verbal reply, this gives you immediate feedback on how they took your message. Now, some people hide their reaction. Some people swallow their emotions and you can never tell what you're saying. So it's a little harder to tell what's going on there. But if you have what we call in NLP as a presupposition or an assumption that people will only understand you to the extent that you communicate, then you will be very careful how you communicate with different people. Now, before I get a lot of disagreement on that, because I know there are disagreements out there on this statement, think about it this way. We are so used to talking and communicating the way we know how to do it. I know how to communicate with you the way I do on the air, or if you're a client, one-on-one, yet I've learned that other people don't always get the same message even though I'm saying the same thing. So does that make them responsible for interpreting me, or me responsible for communicating it differently to them? Everyone speaks a different language, even if you're speaking the same language. We all speak a different emotional language. We all speak a different verbal language, only because we have a different history, a different reference while we were growing up, what things meant to us. If I say the word dog to you, you're going to have a certain image in your mind. You may have a certain sound in your mind. You're going to have all these thoughts and emotions and imagery and sounds wrapped up into that one word. But if I say dog to someone else, they may think something entirely different. They may think it's DAWG, like, hey dog, how's it going? So think of every word that you know, which is a lot, and all the meaning that you tie up into every word. And how you interpret that word is going to be different than how other people interpret that word. Now, of course, we say words with emotional inflection. We say words with our own personality, our own flair. And so people can get used to how we communicate with them. And when they're used to it, it's no problem. They can figure us out. Even if we're being very general, they can still figure out when we say something like, you know that thingy on top of the sink? Oh yeah, I know what that is. Then it's no problem because they know you well enough. But where it gets tricky is that they do know you well enough that even when you try to convey a different message, if they've known you for years, they're going to hear the message that you've always given them. So the vibe I got from your email is that when you communicate with people, they're misunderstanding you. They're thinking that they're in trouble. Like you said, oh no, I guess I'm in trouble or something like that. So it's probably how they've viewed you for a long time. And then when you learn new communication skills and you're trying to be more tactful and diplomatic in your approach with people, or in this case, you're trying to honor your personal boundaries, they still know you as the old you. Maybe the old you was never harsh or abrasive in your conversation, but they, over the years, have taken it that way. They've misunderstood you. And quite possibly because of the way you communicated in the past, it's going to take some time for them to get used to how you communicate now, especially when you're honoring your personal boundaries. And speaking of which, honoring your personal boundaries isn't so much an attitude. You don't walk in the door and go, well, I'm not going to take that in my life, and then just put your hand up and say, talk to the hand, because I'm not going to accept that in my life. That's kind of an attitude, but honoring your personal boundaries is more about respecting yourself. It's respecting yourself to the point where you won't let toxic things in. You won't let bad or negative people or behaviors into your life. It's where you set up walls that will protect you so that you aren't compromised. An example of that would be that if you went to a party and they started pulling out drugs and alcohol or whatever, something that maybe you are against. And I don't know what you're against, but whatever you're against and something happens around you, you can either walk away from it or just deny it or reject it from being in your life. Now, the question is, how are you denying it from your life? Are you going, no way, get the hell away from me? Or are you approaching it like, no, I don't do that. Or no, I don't wish to have any of that. And there's a difference, as you can tell, between hell no, get that away from me, or no thanks, I don't do that. Another way to look at honoring your boundaries is to think of it as eliminating your expectations of others and creating expectations of yourself. In other words, give yourself what you want. Don't rely on the outside world to do it for you. They're just along for the ride, though it's nice to treat people that you want to ride with nicely. But don't expect too much. Don't place expectations on others, and just create expectations for yourself. And what that really means is just a subtle shift in mindset. If you expect a certain level for yourself and don't expect that same level from other people, then the way you approach situations will be a little different. If you go into a situation and you expect something of someone, that's going to show. That's going to appear the way you present yourself. But if you go into a situation expecting something for yourself, and maybe expect isn't the right word, but just knowing what you want for yourself and what you'll let into your life, it's a whole different energy. It's a whole different approach to a situation. It's the difference between get that away from me right now and I don't want that in my life, or no, thank you, I don't want any. So just remember that when you develop an attitude of respect for yourself, that's how you come across. And respecting yourself is a positive place to be. It's a good attitude. And people will either respect you respecting yourself or they won't. But at least you're coming across in that way instead of being or coming across in a way that people might misinterpret as mean-spirited or angry. There's a big difference. So just keep that in mind next time you want to honor your boundaries and do what's right for you. Because I wholeheartedly agree in honoring your boundaries and doing what's right for you and keeping the toxic stuff out of your personal space. Now, the example you gave about your father isn't honoring your boundaries. You say your needs or requests are constantly being shuffled. Well, the reason is because there's no accountability, nor is there any follow-through on your part. When people are accountable for what they do, they realize the consequences of their actions. If there's no consequences, their actions never change. So when you don't or can't follow through and create accountability for them, you'll never get what you want. I mean, that's if you're around people that dismiss or constantly shuffle your needs, like you said. You may not have to make them accountable, but you do have to follow through on an action plan for yourself. You have to make plans for you. When you have needs that aren't being met, you get them met in some other way and accept that some people simply don't care about your personal boundaries, or they don't even realize they're violating your boundaries. It reminds me of a guy I worked with. He was so slow. We were on a project together, and I work pretty efficiently. I'm pretty fast, and I understand that not everyone can keep up with my pace. So I give leeway, and when I'm leading a team, like when I was in IT and I was installing computers, I would lead teams, and not everyone could be as efficient as I was, and some people were more efficient. But I worked with one guy who was so damn slow that I found that I could no longer rely on him to finish on time. And so instead of continuing trying to get my needs met, keep pestering him, telling him to go work faster, or giving him tips on how to work faster, no matter what I did, it didn't work. So I decided to just accept that he was slow. And I realized that he couldn't be relied upon. And at that point, I made a note. This guy is slow. He's not going to be very helpful. And then I assigned him things that I knew he could handle. I tell you that story because some people are the way they are, and they'll never change. And you can keep trying to expect things from them. You can keep expecting things from them, expecting them to do things, expecting them to change, or you can accept who they are and realize they'll never change. Have you ever worked with someone who was a liar? Like you caught them in a lie and you were like, whoa, that person just lied to me. When I've done that, when I've had people like that around me, I just make a mental note. I go, okay, that person's a liar, so I know I can't trust them with certain information. And then I move on knowing that there are certain things that he will not be able to do for me because I will not be able to trust him or her. What it comes down to is that you work with the tools you have. You treat the people around you the way they present themselves to you. And pretty soon you just know which people that you won't synergize with. Most people have some sort of guard up, so they learn to lie or be disrespectful or act in some way that gets their own needs met. The problem is that when you have to take from someone else in order to meet your own needs, and if you're in that taking space, then you are meeting your own needs, but you're also building resentment in other people. Now, this could be what's happening with you. Other people are getting their needs met by taking something from you. This happened to me when I used to be overly compassionate to everyone. I got constantly taken advantage because people didn't know I had boundaries they were crossing. When you're too nice, this happens. So I decided to stay nice, but still honor myself by speaking my truth. So instead of saying things like, sure, I'll work double shifts on both weekend days, I said, I want to take this weekend off. I'm sorry I can't help you. It's a place of respect for the other person while honoring yourself. In your situation, it almost sounds like people don't respect you. My question is, why do you think that is? Have you ever lost it for no reason? Have you ever acted in a way that was unreasonable? Or have you always made requests rationally? I know overly emotional people that no matter how they try to get their needs met, they always sound like they're going to have a mental breakdown, even when they're calm. People that overreact a lot will create a stigma about them. For example, if you ask your kids to do the dishes, and if they ever said no, or I'll do them later, did you yell at the top of your lungs, you're going to get in there and do the dishes now? Or did you calmly say, all right, give me your cell phone, go to your room, and stay in there until you're ready to do the dishes? I'm willing to bet it's not always that calm. Cesar Millan, he's a dog trainer, he's known as the dog whisperer, calls this a calm, assertive energy. Calm assertion is how you honor your boundaries in a productive way. Deliver your message in a calm, assertive way, and only get more intense and emotional when necessary. Eventually, people around you will get the picture. They'll see that when you're calm, you mean business, and you're giving them plenty of leeway to come to a place of self-realization. Please do the dishes now. Don't make me ask again. I'll do them later. You'll do them now, or you'll go to your room. Oh, come on. I don't want to do them right now. I'm still playing my game. If you don't do them, I'll shut off your game. Whatever, fine. Thank you. In this scenario, it lets the person, or in this case, a child, decide if they want the consequences. However, if you threaten with those consequences over and over again, but never follow through, you'll find that they only fear you yelling or getting angry overall. In other words, they'll feel like they're getting into trouble instead of dealing with the consequences of getting into trouble. I mean, that's my guess. You probably don't follow through calmly, and then you get upset, and they see that as the consequence. You're upset. I mean, whatever the outcome, they'll associate not doing what you ask with that outcome. So if you ask them to clean their room and they don't, and then you yell, it's going to be like that overreactive emotional person that I mentioned earlier. And when you're in that type of dramatic state, people will know you as, quote, that person. And watch out for her. She always overreacts. But if you administer consequence for their behavior or misbehavior, they'll start associating not doing their chores with not getting time to play games or whatever you decide. It's a matter of reassociating them with new consequences instead of the ones they're used to. Do that enough and you'll start to get a different response then. Uh-oh, we're in trouble now. I don't know the entire dynamic of your situation, so a lot of this is educated guesses. But I do know that if you behave the same way over and over again around them, they'll respond the same way back. So let me just sum this up really quickly and easily. Yes, honor yourself, but know that some people will still remember who you've always been, especially if you've never honored your boundaries before. And do it with a calm, assertive energy. And finally, when you're honoring your boundaries and your needs still get shuffled around and they really aren't paying attention to you or honoring your needs, then you need to remove people from your life that don't honor your boundaries. Now, you can't do that with children, but you can do that with parents and adults, because you honoring your boundaries should be respected above all, or above most things. I remember when my father used to call me up and ask for money. And this is when I was in my 30s. I was like, hey, Dad. And he'd be like, hey. And then the conversation would go on for a while, and I could always tell where it was leading. It was leading to him wanting money. And I got so uncomfortable with it. And then finally one night I said, Dad, I'm not going to lend you money anymore. And he was like, oh, that's fine. That's okay. No problem. And we talked a little bit more. And guess what? I never heard from him again. Now, I did call him back a few years later, or I forget when, but many years went by before we talked again. All because he was trying to get his needs met from me, but wasn't honoring me, honoring my needs. And sometimes people who don't do that probably shouldn't be in your life. Again, children are different. You're just going to have to take the punches with them and do your best. But that's where I am with this, and I hope it helps you. Thank you so much for writing, Jill. Let's go on to our next segment where I'm going to read another email that I received recently that calls me out. I can't wait to share it with you, and I can't wait to answer it now. I want to mention one thing before we get to what's in the box, and that is the new year is upon us. And some of you are probably making resolutions or have made resolutions. Now, if you've done resolutions in the past, have you stuck with them? Let me give you the opposite advice that you're probably used to hearing. If resolutions never work for you, stop making them. Seriously, don't make resolutions if you're not going to keep them. The reason I say that is because when you make a commitment to yourself to do something and you don't do it, you build what's called incongruence in yourself. If you don't know what that means, I'll explain it in a minute. The more you commit to and then fail to follow through on, the less often you'll be able to trust yourself and make decisions. And if you don't understand what that means, just ask yourself, how often do I find myself unable to make a decision? If it's more often than not, then you're probably setting yourself up for failure. Making promises or commitments that you end up breaking sets yourself up for failure because there's a part of you that doesn't really believe you anymore. In other words, when you say, I resolve to get more exercise this year, and it never happens, or you do start it, but then you quit, what you're really telling your subconscious mind is this: I resolve to confuse you and make you think I'm going left when I'm really going right. Whenever you commit to something, follow through or don't commit. And I'm not talking about just New Year's resolutions. I'm talking about any type of commitment that you make to yourself or anyone else. Incongruence is when you say one thing but do another. It's when you're smiling but you're actually sad. It's when you commit to something and then choose not to go through with it. Now, there are times where not going through with something is absolutely in your best interest. I'm not talking about those times. I'm talking about everyday situations where the simple messages that you send to your subconscious mind are either beneficial to you in the long run or detrimental because of incongruent behavior. It's almost like you're lying to your subconscious mind. And the more you do it, the less integrated your life will be. You'll continually set yourself up to fail, and you'll have no idea why your plans keep getting sabotaged. Anyway, my point is to do your best to stay congruent. If you tell yourself that you'll absolutely read 20 pages of your book today but never get around to it, that's incongruent. It's not bad or evil. It's just confusing to the subconscious mind. Now, when you start being more congruent and doing what you actually commit to, you'll find that life works with you instead of against you more and more each day. So if you're doing what you can to make the best life you possibly can, but you're still having issues, you're still having trouble with making decisions or keeping resolutions that you really want to keep, there's probably a reason that you can uncover either by listening to this show or consider coaching one-on-one with me. Go to theoverwhelmedbrain.com and click on Coach with Paul, and let's get together. Let's talk and find out what's holding you back from creating the life you want. If you want my undivided personal attention, go to theoverwhelmedbrain.com and click on Coach with Paul. I hope to talk to you soon. All right, now it's time for a What's in the Box segment, and I have a juicy one for you. I just received an email from someone named Cindy. She said I could use her name, so that's what I've done. Cindy wrote to me and called me out, and I can't wait to address it. This ought to be good. Paul, I only became aware of you because I did a search in iTunes for highly sensitive people, because I am one and I'm a fan of Kelly's podcast. And she's talking about Kelly with the Highly Sensitive Person podcast. I think that's what it's called. I listened to the episode and was intrigued by your rich and alluring voice. So I stayed and tuned in to more episodes, where I became even more intrigued with your story, especially the fact that you used to live in Oregon. That's where I'm from, and I'm currently residing. I wish you luck with your show and will continue to follow you on Facebook, but I will no longer be a listener, as your style, personality is not really my taste. And as I am fully aware of my capabilities and power, so your teachings are pretty much preaching to the choir as far as I'm concerned. The other reason I won't be a listener any longer is because of the following. My concern is regarding your relationship trends. You, being a man of your intellect, education, age, and supposed growth and healing, it surprises me how quickly you seem to seek another girlfriend so soon after your divorce, instead of taking some time off from relationships and truly learning about yourself and healing and just being alone with yourself for a while. This behavior seems quite immature and impulsive. I'm a fan and subscriber to many personal growth and healing podcasts, and I heard you on someone else's, I don't remember who, but you even stated you probably shouldn't be seeking out another relationship so quickly after your divorce. I could be wrong, but in listening to past episodes of your show, the longest stretch of time in between past long-term relationships has been 6 months. There has to be some kind of pathology going on for that. And I question if you are truly healed and have actually, quote, gotten it. According to your Facebook timeline, you were still married in April 2014, and then just 3 months later in July of 2014, you met face-to-face with a girl that you met online dating. Does that seem healthy to you? Especially given the fact that you didn't have your shit together when you actively sought another relationship. You were living with your mother with no money. Have you reflected on this and sat with a therapist, perhaps? I have no problem with just dating or starting another relationship shortly after the demise of another, if it occurs organically and by happenstance. Like if you met someone while at a Starbucks or attending a conference. It's your seeking it out and getting so serious with someone so quickly after a relationship and before you've become the best man you can be to offer a woman. That's what my concern is. Me personally, I would date, but not even entertain the notion of getting seriously involved with a man in your previous situation until he was stable both financially and emotionally. Nothing against your current girlfriend, but the fact that she did entertain that notion, she being a single mom trying to raise a child and then taking a man in your situation, what healthy woman would want an unstable situation for herself and her child? Does that not smack of desperation on both your parts to you? I feel there's a lack of love for yourself as well as a lack of true personal growth. And that's not very encouraging or empowering behavior for a personal growth coach. Again, I wish you well and luck with your show and hope you seek counseling for the above. Perhaps this can be a subject you can explore in one of your future podcasts, even though I won't be tuning in to hear it. With all due respect, Cindy F. Feel free to use my name if you read this on the air. What a great letter, Cindy. Thank you so much for writing. I honor and respect your opinions. I remember when I heard Tony Robbins, and I would listen to him quite a bit in the past, not so much recently, but I still listen to him and watch him on YouTube every now and then. Well, a couple of years ago, I found out that he cheated on his wife years before. And that's how he met his current wife. I forget her name. And I was like, how can this guy who teaches all he teaches be in integrity? How can I follow someone who's not in integrity in his own marriage when he talks about what to do to save or have a better relationship or have a better sense of self or improve yourself in any way? How can I follow someone who makes those kind of gross miscalculations or misjudgments? And like you, I had trouble trying to get past the mistakes or intentional betrayals that he did with his wife. I had trouble getting past his personal life, regardless of all the stuff I learned from him. I had trouble. I admit it. And it took me probably over a year to really start understanding and respecting him again. And the reason I went back to him was because as a coach myself, I've talked to so many people who were in situations where they did the same thing he did. I heard their side of the story. I heard what they went through. I heard the pain that they went through. I heard everything that I could hear from both sides. And my heart went out to both sides. I still disagree with cheating. I still disagree with infidelity. I think that you should just be honest and upfront with the person you're with and say, look, it's not working out. I'm thinking about cheating before it ever comes that way. But he made a gross miscalculation, and I could either hold it against him and never listen to his stuff again, or I could learn from him, even though he's made his own mistakes. Now, with that, let's talk about me. Let's talk about what I went through and your perception and interpretations or misinterpretations of what you see about my life. First of all, I 100% agree with you. If I was a serial dater and every time I got dumped, I went after the next person as soon as possible, like you said, within 6 months, then yes, it would be something to look at. It would be something that I would need to make sure that I wasn't still clinging on, still needy, just wanting love, just wanting attention. And it's absolutely what happened to me after my 13-year relationship ended and I met who would be my future wife, soon to be ex-wife. After my 13-year relationship ended, I knew that I needed someone else in my life. I knew it. And I was wrong. I believed that I needed someone else in my life wholeheartedly. And I was wrong. I needed someone to fulfill me. I needed someone so that I could feel love, so that I could feel happy, so that I could feel important, so I could feel significant. And I was so depressed that I medicated myself by finding someone to replace my last girlfriend. It was a mistake. I fully admit that I was not ready. And you've heard on this show, if you've been listening a while, me talk about that very thing I did. I went into another relationship, still depressed, still not healed, and not ready to start this whole process over again because I believed that I needed someone else to be happy, that I needed someone else in order to get out of depression. And during that 8 years with the person who became my wife, I was so triggered a lot of the times. I would get angry, I would get upset, and I would swallow my emotions, and I was still trying to heal from my last relationship, and of course, from my entire life. Up until my 20s, I was in a dysfunctional family, and I got into a relationship where I was dysfunctional, bringing all my childhood beliefs and fears into my adult relationships. So up until that point when I met who would be my wife, then who became my ex-wife, I was completely not ready for that relationship. And that's why it failed. Now, what's interesting is that you did some research, which I appreciate, but I will have to correct something that you said, and that was the timeline. I separated from my wife in January, not May. Actually, when we separated, it was in July of 2013. So it was 8 months previous to that. We just saw each other the last time in January. So it was a lot longer than what you think it was. And by May, she surprised me with a divorce. And at that time, I was still in love with her. I still wanted it to work out. But it shocked me. I didn't know what to do. And at the time, I couldn't handle it. But at the same time, I knew I had to start healing right away, which is why 2 days later, I went to file for a divorce. So yes, by the end of May, starting June, I was divorced. Now, all that time, we'd not been living together and I had not seen her. She'd been living in California. I was living in Oregon, and we did not see each other. And that's when everything just started falling apart. But in a good way. I mean, I did not want the end of the relationship, but at the same time, I had done so much personal growth on my own emotional triggers. I've done a lot of healing from the dysfunction of my past that when this relationship ended, I still had some baggage and I still had healing to do, but it wasn't the devastation that I felt from that 13-year relationship. It didn't pull me into the throes of depression. It just happened at the right time when I was prepared enough to handle it. It was still awful, and I still fell on the floor crying, knowing that it was over, trying to comprehend it. But I came to an acceptance pretty quickly that it wasn't going to get any better. So after our lease ended in Oregon, I decided to pack up and move back with family. Now, I don't know where you get the idea that I was broke. I mean, you may have heard me say something similar on an interview, but I was choosing to save money and not just get a place in New Hampshire. I'd rather stay with family and figure out where I want to live. So I did. I chose to stay with my mom, whom I hadn't seen in many years. So I was able to rekindle my relationship with her and save some money at the same time. And for some reason, while I was living with her, I decided that I wanted to start looking at dating prospects again. That was dysfunctional. That was me wanting to, again, to fill the gap. I agree with you. It was a bad situation. I shouldn't have done that. And in fact, after about a month of doing that, being on 2 online dating sites, I said, I remember the day, I said, what the hell am I doing? I'm not ready. I actually came to that realization. I said, I am not ready. I'm not ready to date. I need to find myself and be happy with myself. I'm not going to get into another relationship. And that's what I did. I stopped. I canceled my account and I said, no more for me. I'm just going to be happy with me, and whatever happens, like you said, if I meet someone in line at the Starbucks, great. It's all organic. Well, I don't think I've ever told this story on the air, but the day before I closed that account, which was the day I realized I wasn't ready for dating, my current girlfriend had written to me and said, hey, I'm interested in your profile. I've got similar things going on. Let's talk business. And it really was a platonic reach out for friendship or business communication. She liked the fact that my history of personal growth, and she wanted to find out how I was doing things and what I was doing to be a success or not a success. So I wrote back to her and I said, in almost the exact words, hey, look, I just got divorced. I moved in with my mom. I have no real job right now. And if you still want to talk to me, great. Otherwise, I wish you the best. Well, she wrote back and she said, LOL, laugh out loud. It's so refreshing to meet someone so honest. And I laughed, thinking that I would never hear from her again. And from that point on, for months, we just talked as friends. And I would even ask her, have you gone out on a date? How's it going? And she would ask me, have you gone out on a date? And I was like, I'm not looking. And I did not want anything to do with anyone at the time. Now, she lives in Georgia, and I was living in New Hampshire at the time, so I knew that was another way it was going to be safe and it wasn't going to grow into anything. But a couple of months went by and she said, if you were closer, we could probably go on a date and see if there's any compatibility here. And I was like, what? I said, I thought we agreed we're not going to date each other and this isn't going to happen. And she goes, well, I'm just thinking just to see what would happen. And that was the first inkling of a possible connection or spark that could be, but we still hadn't met. All we were doing was talking on the phone or talking through chat, but nothing beyond that. In fact, I hadn't met her physically until it was October. So from January to October, that was the first time I'd ever connected with any other woman. So that was quite a long time. Now, at that time, we still weren't really dating, but we'd met. We really enjoyed each other's company. She flew up to meet some friends in Vermont, and then I met her, and then her and her friends and I hung out, and then she went back home, and we really enjoyed each other's company. And I was like, is this really happening? I mean, she's great. And I told my mom, I'm like, I'm never going to date this person. I'm never going to date her. And somehow things kept happening that brought us together. Everything that I would say, I would tell her things that I wouldn't tell anyone, almost in hopes to drive her away, and it actually brought her closer. So no matter what I did and no matter what she said, it just seemed to drive us closer and closer. So by March of the next year, I decided to move down to Georgia and be with her. And now it wasn't a fully, I'm going to move in with you. I actually told her, let's just try it for a month. Let's just see if this works. And it's funny because she had the same concerns that you did, Cindy. She didn't want someone who just goes from person to person before they even heal and find themselves before the next person. I even had those concerns. That's why I said no more dating. Just the way everything happened, the length of time that went by, this really did blossom organically. And if you've been listening a while, you've probably heard me tell the stories of how I was able to heal from some of the stuff that I went through in my marriage. Now, I will say this. The one thing that does really still bother me about not being married anymore is the fantasy I had about being married forever. I miss the idea of not having that fantasy of being married forever. I miss the idea of not having found the person that I was going to be married to for the rest of my life. It saddens me that I took such time and energy to invest in something that I thought was going to last for the rest of my life. That is sad. But the person I was married to was not the right person. The entire relationship, I felt triggered, and I never felt as close to her as I could be. And no matter how many months you add up, no matter how much time it takes to heal and grow and learn from everything that you've been through, sometimes things just happen at the right time, the perfect time, when you need it to happen, or when you don't even expect it to happen. Did I plan this? I tried. I tried to online date. I tried to get a date. And that one day I said, this is crazy. I'm not ready. And I wasn't ready for months until I decided, okay, I've been communicating with this person. We're still good friends. And even though it seems like we could be a good match, I'm still not going to go down there. In fact, I even told her, I'm not moving. And she said, well, I'm not moving either. And so we came to an agreement that we just probably wouldn't ever be together. It was all a friendship that grew organically, even though I tried to prevent it in some ways. So your comment of maybe I should get therapy, you're probably right. We probably all need therapy or coaching in some way. But I have to look at my life and go, what's not working and what is working? What do I feel bad about? What is stopping me from doing the things I want to do? Am I carrying any emotional baggage? Is depression kicking in? And I'm not getting that. And whenever something does come up, something negative, or maybe a tear forms of the fantasy that I had, that I'd be married for eternity or whatever, I sit with it. I let it come. I express it. I talk to my girlfriend about it. I tell her what's going on inside of me. We communicate, and I'm able to continue healing and growing. And quite honestly, who knows how much time it takes? Who knows that if a month or a year or a decade is ever going to be long enough to get over something that you thought was going to work out, to get over the death of something that you wanted in your life. So you may feel that there's a lack of love for myself, as well as a lack of true personal growth, and that it's not very, like you said, encouraging or empowering behavior for a coach. And I just have to say, I respect your opinion, and I disagree. I love and honor myself, and I'm doing exactly what I know is right for me, and it feels pretty darn good. And if it turns out you're right and I'm wrong, then that's something I have to learn. I've always been an open book on this show, and I will always address anything that comes up. I'm so glad you wrote, Cindy. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts about what I've gone through. And just as a side note, not everything you read is exactly how it appears. Not everything you hear is the entire story. I don't even put my real birth date on Facebook because it's too private. So I thank you so much for writing, Cindy, and I honor and respect everything that you've said. I know that you have an interpretation of what happened, and quite possible that I might need counseling or healing, and I won't disagree. You're probably right. I think we all need some sort of counseling or coaching. I think there's always something going on inside of us. But until it hinders my progress, until it appears as some sort of dysfunction in my life, until I'm emotionally triggered by it where it impedes my happiness, then I'm going to continue taking my own advice, which is do what works and keep moving forward as long as it's working And as long as it's making me happy, I think that's the best path. I've taken steps and I continue to take steps to heal and grow through everything I've gone through, not just relationships. This really has very little to do with my current or past relationships, and a lot to do with what I've felt as a child and what I went through. And as I heal more and more of those times in my life, my relationships just get better and better. I hate to lose you as a listener, Cindy, and I hope maybe you'll tune in one day again, but I do appreciate you. And thank you so much for you caring about me enough to say everything that you did. That's our show today. Thanks for joining me. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Overwhelmed Brain. I want to thank Asha with getoutofthemess.com. You can move forward alone and hope things go well, or you can pay less than $1 a day to get a team of attorneys to get you through almost any situation. If you're in the US or Canada, visit getoutofthemess.com or call 678-355-8777 and talk with Asha today. I want to thank everyone who has purchased a book or a worksheet or used the Amazon link to shop as you normally would, which gives us pennies for every dollar you spend. Your contributions and shopping habits are making a difference, so thank you. Thank you to Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com for some of the music transitions in The Overwhelmed Brain. And in closing today, I just want to mention again that letter that was sent to me from Cindy. I am honored. I really appreciate it. It was a surprise to receive, but I'm happy when people take notice of what's going on in my life. They care enough to say things that might sound negative or harsh or whatever. She cared enough to write this long letter to tell me what she thought might be happening with me. I'm not 100% healed from anything in my life completely. There are certain things in my life that I'm still triggered by that I do need to work on. It probably goes that way for almost anyone. But what I was thinking about with her letter is, when is the right time for anything? And what I mean is, for example, and this is going to be a terrible analogy, I apologize. Let's just say that you lost someone you loved. Let's just say they died. When is the right time for you to start loving someone else? When is the right time for you to get over the person that died so that you can move on and love the people that are alive? Again, that's a terrible analogy. But, in that situation, there's probably never a right time. It just has to happen. It doesn't mean that the people around you that are alive are replacing the person that died. It just means that they want to be near you, they want to be close to you, they want to comfort you. And I know it's not the same thing. When you're in a relationship and someone leaves you, it really depends on how many attachments and dependencies that you have on them and how much you're connected to the point where if they leave, then it feels like a part of you has died. I think that's what happens in a lot of relationships. Someone leaves or dies, and they feel like a part of them had died or has died. When my wife decided to get a divorce, it did feel like there was a part of me dying because, you open your heart up. You open yourself up more to the person that you're closest to, so you feel vulnerable at the same time you feel safe. You feel weak at the same time you feel strong. There's so many attachments between you two. It's a bonding. And that's what I had with my wife. At least half of that, because she was letting me go long before I was letting her go. But when she wanted the divorce and I knew there was no other way around it, I went forward. I knew that I had to heal from this as soon as possible. Not because at the time I was thinking about dating anyone else, but I was thinking that I didn't want to hurt. I didn't want to feel what I was feeling. Yes, I wanted to deny my grieving, and it was not a healthy decision. But when you get a divorce, sometimes you need a few months, or maybe even longer for some people, to go through a process of, you're going to make crazy decisions. You're going to think crazy thoughts. And I went through that. I had thoughts that were crazy to me now that I think about it. But after I talked with her back and forth a few times and said everything I wanted to say to her, and then I finally wrote that email that I had to rewrite 3 times, and the last time I just felt complete, like I had let her go, it felt relieving. It felt great. And at that point, when I finally let her go, now I didn't let the idea of marriage and love and everything else go. I let her go. I healed from having her in my life. I may not have healed from being married. I may not have healed from being in a loving relationship, even though it wasn't fully that when we were together. There was so much more it could have been. But I was able to let her go. And that helped me move on. That helped me understand that what she did for me in my life, I could also fulfill in me. But I thought it was very important, just like Cindy said, to heal on my own, find my own place. And that's exactly what I did. That's exactly what I went through. It wasn't the short time period that she laid out. It took a lot longer. But again, what's long enough? And what is considered healing? Does everyone need a counselor to heal, or do they need their spirituality? Do they need meditation? Do they need to talk to someone else? Do they need to talk to their best friend? What is the best process? There is no best process. Start from the deepest pain and bring it out. And that's what I did. I brought out the deepest pain. Am I in denial? Is there still more in there? There could be. I'm certainly open when that comes up. So if and when it does, I'll be prepared for it and I'll deal with it as it happens. And I'll continue to search for it. I'm a critical thinker. I'm always looking like, am I over this yet? Am I healed yet? I always ask myself those questions, and I will continue to do so. So I appreciate the reminder. Thank you again, Cindy, for writing, and thank you for listening to this show. Cindy's probably not listening, but I wrote her an email saying, hey, it's on if you want to hear it. Thank you, everyone else, for listening to the show, and thank you for letting me share my thoughts on this subject, and we will talk to you again next week. And with that, open your mind and step into your power and be firm in your decisions and actions so that you can create the life you want. Always take steps to grow and evolve. You are powerful beyond measure. And above all, and this is something I absolutely know to be true about you, you are amazing.